Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're going to analyze in order to understand The Partner's Tale, which you should have read with Jimmy. If you didn't, go back and reread it or read it for the first time. This is a complex tale in many ways. There's the partner's prologue, which is a long-winded thing before he even starts his tale. And you know what we're reading, right? The Canterbury Tales, where each pilgrim tells a story, a tale on their journey, right? The partner explains with no shame, basically, what kind of crook he is. He basically tells you in the prologue, I'm a crook. I sell indulgences. And then, of course, there's his tale itself of three young roisterers, people who engage in noisy, boisterous merrymaking. They're drunkards, right? Three young drunkards. And how they go hunting for death in order to kill death, and what happens to them. So, layers upon layers. So what's this all about? Well, the tale is told by the partner, a church official who sells indulgences, remissions of sins, for profit. Basically sells, I'll forgive you your sins if you give me some money. And before he even begins the story, the partner, and note, he's never named, nor are the three men in his story, those boisterers. We're going to discuss why later on, but he delivers a confession of sorts in his prologue. He admits, I'm a fraud, motivated entirely by greed. This is very important to understanding this tale. He has no real concern for saving souls. He only wants money. And yet, his sermons are always warning against greed is the root of all evil. Greed, he says it in Latin several times. So the first clue to his character, and remember, when we read classical literature, we don't care what anybody else says, scholars, critics, we don't care about that. We want to read the story and draw our own evidence from the story. So we got to read carefully. That's what Jimmy tries to teach you. So the first clue in the partner's character is, of bishops and patriarchs I say in Latin some few words or so, to spice up my sermon. It flavors my appeal and stirs my listeners to no great zeal. Remember when we read that? So he's basically telling you, I throw in a little Latin, right? A little Latin. Do you speak Latin? Dominus vobiscum? No? Okay. That's okay. In those days, not many people did, right? Except the educated people, and they used that to their advantage to try and fool lesser educated people. Sometimes people with big vocabularies try to do that, don't they? And then there's this. Then I display my cases made of glass, crammed to the top with rags and bones, and they pass for relics with all the people in the place. I have a shoulder bone in a metal case, part of a sheep owned by a holy Jew. So basically he's admitting he's a fraud. He's a crook. These aren't really relics of saints and good people, and he does this, right? Here's the question. Why is he telling the pilgrims this about himself before he tells his tale? Why is he doing this? Do you tell people about yourself? I mean, your real self? Hi, I'm a crook. I don't think so, right? So what's behind this guy's motivation in admitting to his fellow travelers that he's a fraud? What does he hope to gain? We're going to talk about this. In any case, this is usually called a hypocrite. Practice have one thing and then do another thing, claiming to have moral standards, and then your own behavior doesn't conform to those standards. You see what I'm talking about? Hypocrisy. Or do you believe that hypocrisy doesn't exist? Have you looked around lately? Greed is bad. I'm greedy, therefore I should be bad, but I'm not bad, so greed is good. You remember that line? We're going to talk about that line, greed is good. Remember what movie that's from? The question you have to ask yourself when you read this tale is, why is the partner telling the other pilgrims and this about himself up front? We're going to discuss that. Here's another clue. In all my sermons to make people free in giving pennies, especially to me, my mind is fixed on what I stand to win, and not at all upon correcting sin. I don't care when they are in the grave if souls go berry picking that I could save. Wow. Greed is the root of all evil. There's the Latin. Radix malorum est cupiditas. To put my purpose briefly, I confess I preach for nothing but covetousness. It's excess. I did this when we read this tale together. It's excessive desire for something. I desire it, right? Especially for wealth and possessions, right? Silas Marner, great story, right? About a miser, I possess gold. And that's why my text is still and never was, greed is the root of all evil. For by this text I can denounce the very vice that I practice, which is greed. He's admitting this to the travelers. Why? But though that sin is lodged in my own heart, have you heard this recently or ever where someone is preaching to you, no, I'm guilty, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, give me some money. Huh? Sound familiar? I'm able to make other people part from avarice and sorely to repent, though that's not my principal intent. And what's avarice? Extreme greed. So let's look at the plot. The partner's tale begins in a very long introduction with three righteous young men in a tavern, drinking, carousing. They hear a funeral bell, and they learn that a friend of theirs has been killed by a mysterious figure named Death. Enraged, they swear to hunt down and kill this Death. Maybe they don't know what death is, do they? Anyway, during his narration, the partner brings up a lot of references. He brings up Lot, Herod, Seneca, Adam. Why is he doing this? Because when he preaches with examples. There's nothing wrong with using examples in your thesis, right? You want to use examples to prove your point? So each of these is meant to serve as a cautionary example of some kind. So I want to pause and do a sidebar on this about these references. Why? Because it's important to understanding the tale. So each figure represents a failure to resist temptation, especially the kinds that the partner rallies against: gluttony, lust, pride, drunkenness, and greed. So, for example, Lot in Genesis 19. Now, most of the time when this guy was preaching, these people couldn't read, right? So they can't read. And if you've ever dealt with a person who can't read, they're at a severe disadvantage. My wife's aunt couldn't read or write. She was from Italy, and she was a severe disadvantage. And yet, she got through it all. That's another story. After the destruction of Sodom, you remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? If not, go look it up. Lot's daughters get Lot drunk, and they sleep with him to preserve their bloodline. Incest, ladies and gentlemen. The partner uses this as an example of the dangers of drunkenness and how alcohol dissolves reason and leads to sexual sin and incest. And then he brings up Herod, who is Herod Antipas, the ruler who, drunk and enthralled by Salome's dancing, that's his stepdaughter, agrees to her request, which was prompted by her mother, to behead John the Baptist. If you've ever watched Ten Commandments, there's great scenes in there where Robert Ryan plays John the Baptist and he gets his head chopped off. So again, we see drunkenness helping impulsivity, being impulsive, and moral blindness to emerge. Why is drunkenness important? Because those three guys that go hunting death are drunkards. Seneca was a Stoic philosopher. Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations, which is on Jimmy's website. And I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Seneca preached self-control and moral discipline. That's what Stoics did. It's a great, great read. So the partner ironically uses him to underlie the virtue of temperance. Because even though Seneca was entangled in the morally corrupt world of Nero, who was a horrible emperor, and ultimately Seneca was forced to take his own life. These are all classical references meant to lead philosophical weight to the tale that he's telling. But it comes from a man who lives in contradiction to these ideals himself, the partner. Adam, of course, is another tale of temptation and disobedience where a single indulgence, eating the forbidden fruit, Adam and Eve, brings about the corruption of all mankind. That's another story, and I think what we'll do one day, if not already, is we're going to read the story of Adam and Eve, Genesis. That's a great, great read. That's a classic. Again, here the lesson is clear. One moment of giving in to desire has catastrophic consequences. Jimmy, what the heck are you talking about? Well, Albert Camus said it better than Jimmy. One moment of weakness and everything is lost. Theory and practice. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that. Whatever you do, do not forget that. Stay strong. There's something revealing about these examples that the partner chooses. They're all characters whose desires betray them. Does it define the partner himself? In naming these failures, he's in a way describing himself. He's not giving in to his desires. He's greedy. And he admits it freely. He knows people respond to fear, authority, warnings, and he's not concerned with teaching them to be good. He's only concerned with sounding convincing in order to get their money. Let's go back to the plot. I vow it by God's holy bones. Hear me, fellows of mine. We are all one, we three. These are the three boys. Let us hold up his hand to the other, and each of us become his fellow's brother. We're going to slay this death, whoever he is, who slaughters and betrays. He shall be slain, whose hand so many slays, and yes, by God's dignity, before tonight. So they take an oath. They're going to kill death. How the hell do you kill death? The only way you can think you can kill death, right, is if you're loaded, if you're drunk. Can you, let's go out and kill death. In any case, on their quest, they encounter a mysterious old man who's wrapped in rags. He says, the old man says, he's been wandering for years and he's unable to die. So the partner never comes right out and says, this is death. But if this old man says he's been wandering for years, unable to die, well, I think we can safely conclude they just ran into death, right? And he longs for death. You think death longs for death? Reminds me of what? Meet Joe Black, the Brad Pitt movie. There's also a March movie. What's his name? I forget. Frederick March, the early years. Death Takes a Holiday. It's an old movie. Do you think death wants to die? Is there such a thing as a character named Death? Anyway, the young man rudely demands that he tells them where death is. So he doesn't say it's here. You're looking at him. The old man says it's over by the tree. Death is waiting for you there. This is called irony. What's that? Because the old man may actually be death, only death never dies. Death doesn't die. Death deals out death. So they go to the tree and they don't find death, but they find a pile of gold. Now, is gold death? That's one way to look at this, ladies and gentlemen. You see the layers of meaning? Isn't this beautiful? Is money death? Is money death? I don't know. Is it? What do you think? Immediately, they forget their mission to kill. Oh, God, look at all this money. So they plot to take the treasure. And since it's daytime, they would be accused of theft if they were caught moving it. So they decide to wait until nightfall. They draw lots, little sticks, right, to determine who's going to go in and get some food and wine. The youngest drew the lot, and he goes while the others two stay behind. And as soon as the youngest one is gone, these other two guys, remember, they're not named. We never know their names. They conspire to kill the young one when he returns so that they can split the gold between the two of them. This has reminded Jimmy of the movie The Treasure of Sierra Madre, a 1948 film with Humphrey Bogart, John Huston. Very good movie. You should watch it. It's about gold and what gold does to you. Meanwhile, the youngest formulates his own plan. He visits an apothecary and buys poison because he wants to kill the other two and keep the gold for himself. Greed, right, ladies and gentlemen? Greed is the root of all evil. So he does that, and when he returns, the others stab him to death, and then in celebration, they drink the wine, which has been poisoned, and they die, and they're all dead. So the partner drives home his point. Greed is the root of all evil. So here's some themes in irony, the expression and meaning by which you use language to signify the opposite. The irony is everywhere in this tale. The partner who openly brags that he deceives people for money, he tells a moral tale against greed, even though he's greedy. That's irony, see? Don't be greedy, I'll just be greedy. He uses the story to manipulate the other pilgrims, offering to sell them indulgences at the end. You remember what happens at the end? Do you remember what happens when he starts with the host to sell his pardons? We're going to get back to this, but let me remind you what happens here. So he just says, I'm going to sell you and then the host speaks up. I wish I had in hand your balls instead of relics. I'll be bound. I'll just cut them off and help you carry them around. I'll have them both enshrined in hog's turd. Jimmy wrote, wow. 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 And then the knight, of course, brings them back together. We'll get back to that. But that's what happens. He tells his tale, and then he says, oh, by the way, can you buy some relics and, get some indulgences? Death and fate. The idea that they went looking for death and found death adds a grim, fantastic twist to the tale. Right? Isn't that weird? Their fates were sealed the moment that they gave in to greed. The ragged man was probably death. He can't die. And it reminds me of Meet Joe Black. We talked about that. It's about the corruption of religion itself. The partner seems to embody institutional corruption, church corruption, right? Using religious authority to con the faithful. Just as his tale criticizes others for using their position or knowledge for selfish gain. Pardon me. Martin Luther wouldn't emerge until more than a century after Chaucer. Keep this in mind. This is context. But the corruption of the partner's tale vividly portrays and foreshadows the abuses that Luther would later bring to his Protestant Reformation. What is that? Well, let me do this little sidebar. He was a German monk who launched the Protestant Reformation against the Catholics by nailing 95 theses to the church door in Wittenberg. You can look them up, and you should look them up. He objected to the sale of indulgences, which is what the partner does, the monetization, pay me money and you'll be saved. This is what Luther fought against. The corrupt priesthood using fear of damnation for financial gain. Everything the partner was doing was later, a century later, objected to by Martin Luther, and that's why you have Lutherans. You understand? If not, we'll talk about it. Send me an email. Reading with Jimmy. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. So the tale reads like a case study in what Luther will end up condemning, a church no longer concerned with grace, but with gold. Deception and self-destruction. Every character in this tale thinks he's being clever by betraying the others, but they're all undone by their own treachery, right? What we practice to deceive. I forgot the Shakespeare line now. Oh, what a web of something. I'll remember it. The partner's moral, those who seek profit by betraying others destroy themselves in the process. That's his moral. But it's not what he practices, is it? Think about the others in history who deceived themselves and ended up what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. That's the line I was trying to think of. Napoleon, he thought he could conquer Russia. He deceived himself and he ended up being destroyed instead of destroying. So why is this tale important today? Well, it's compact, it's short, sweet, to the point, it's dramatic. It's almost mathematical, I heard someone say that, in its moral structure. I think that's true. It might be called a medieval morality play. I don't want to get into the minutiae of morality plays like Everyman, which we can talk about if I do decide to read Everyman on this website. But medieval morality plays had things like good and evil, and they were personifications of good and evil to teach people through a play what good and evil and greed were. That's another story. But the genius of this tale is how the partner damns himself even as he tries to manipulate others with a tale of damnation. This is the most curious thing about this for me, for Jimmy. He's telling you, nope, I'm a crook. And oh, by the way, with the other hand, he's saying, give me some money so I can save you. He's not ashamed of being a crook. There's no shame. What is this all about? He chooses a tale that mirrors his vice. The partner tells the story where greed leads to death. It's almost too perfect. It's a warning of the exact sin he just bragged about indulging in himself. Why would a man who knows he's greedy and a fraud tell the moral tale against greed and fraud? You understand what I'm saying here? I am a sinner, and therefore I encourage you to sin. Oh, no, I know you're a sinner, so give me money so I can forgive you. Just give me the money. You see what's going on here? Maybe the story is not meant as a confession, but it's a trap. What does that mean? Well, maybe he's trying to trap these people into what? Giving them money for, they're all sinners. We're all sinners, right? He's showing off his power. The partner tells the tale not to confess, but to demonstrate his control. He's saying, watch how well I can manipulate an audience, even with the story that condemns me. Power. That's when you manipulate other people. Isn't that true? That's the Jimmy's rubber band analogy. If you ever heard me in other analysis talk about that, you have two pieces of the rubber band and each is pulling it. If you keep pulling it, it will snap. But if you let yourself be pulled, and I ask you the question, who's in control? Is it the person pulling, or is it you letting yourself be pulled? This is all classical literature, ladies and gentlemen, all of it. Studies power. That's what this story is ultimately about. The partner's tale is about power, his ability to try and influence these people, manipulate these people. The bad news is the host sees right through him. I'll put your balls in hogster. so much for power, right? So it's a kind of twisted resume. Because if it weren't for the host, maybe if he picked someone else, they would have gave in and say, oh yeah, please forgive me. Here's some money. He sells fake relic. This is really unbelievable. You remember the story of Casablanca? He sells fake. That's not. He's audacious. I'm shocked to see gambling going on when they closed the gambling place in Casablanca. I'm shocked that you're asking for money for forgiveness when you yourself are just told me you're greedy. So it's really a weapon, not a warning, this tale. In the hands of the partner, the tale is not really a moral. It's a tool of fear. He's trying to scare these people. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. And it shouldn't work, but it does work sometimes. Doesn't it? So that's really why it's being told like this. I can't see into Chaucer's head, and neither should you try to. But why would he be writing about a guy like this, right? And use the evidence of the story, who admits he's a fraud, says he's a fraud, tells a tale of fraudery and greed, and then at the same time when he's done, he says, give me some money and I'll forgive you, right? I'll forgive your sins. You'll be saved. And then, of course, the reaction of the host is the key to the story. He sees right through what the partner's saying. So in a way, I think the tale is trying to tell us to watch carefully what's being told to us. Be careful, regardless whether it's greed or whatever. Be careful of what people are telling you. What's the motivation of why they're telling you? Remember, these people couldn't read and write. The people who were listening to the tales, not the pilgrims. But the people who were listening to the tales probably couldn't read and write. So this is absolutely a stunning presentation, right, of a guy who's a fraud. He admits he's a fraud, tells you the story of what happens, right? Imagine trying to kill death, right? For though myself be full of vicious man, a moral tale, yet I will and can tell you. There's no contradiction. Morality for him is a performance. You see? In a way, he's revealing to all of us not only what he is, but why he is. And then the host comes in and bam, whacks him with reality. I'm not going to listen to your BS. There's another dark possibility that the tale is a dare to other pilgrims. He knows they've heard his confession. He knows they'll hear the irony in the story. So why does he tell it? Well, maybe he wants to see what happens when people are confronted with the truth and then are doing nothing. But they don't do nothing, do they? The host immediately reacts with violence. I'm a liar. I use stories to cheat people. Now, let's play the game, shall we? But of course, it's a meta manipulation, but he's not just testing the effectiveness and he fails. He's testing the moral indifference of his audience. If you don't do anything when you see something, right, you're guilty. We were at an event last night and my wife came out of the bathroom and she said, there's blood all over the floor. I said, what? What? So she says, it's very unbelievable. And then some lady came out behind her, ran to her husband, and started walking away. And I said, no, we got to go back. She said, you're right. So we went back. We told the guard, said, you better go in there. There's something going on. And then we run into the woman outside who was bleeding. She had a hematoma that burst. Whatever that is, I don't know what it is, but she was, a very fragile lady. Bleeding from her ankle. So if you just walked away, you're indifferent. You got to take action. When you see something, do something. Just like the host did, right? And maybe the partner can't tell any other story. He's so far gone, that he's left in the machinery of the scam. It's a scam. He's into it, right? It's not bad. He is the tale. Narration is always important, first and third person narration, and it's always important to understand the narrator's position. In the Canterbury Tales, I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, narration is very complex. You've got pilgrims on a journey. Each is a narrator in the tale. And then you have a pilgrim himself. Some say it's Chaucer. It's not. Telling us what he heard, what the others said. So you got a narrator, a story inside a story. Remember that technique, a story inside a story. You got the anonymous narrator, who's not Chaucer, telling us what he heard the partners say. And by the way, that narrator inside the story, the first-person narrator, is never named. The anonymous first-person narrator, right? And while many say it's Chaucer, it's not. He's never named. Forget about it. It's the anonymous first-person narrator. And stories inside a story are classic techniques. If you read The Hand with Jimmy by Maupassant on this website, that's a story inside a story. And there's many, many more examples. But here, each pilgrim tells a tale. So you have the anonymous narrator. You have characters like the partner or knight, etc. And then you have characters inside the story, like the three rioters, or those three drunkards in the partner's tale. So it's complex. And you have to keep this in mind. Be aware of who's speaking. When you read with Jimmy, that's why we take our time, because I want you to be aware of how you can get lost inside the story of a story inside a story. It's like 3 layers, right? Well, what about Chaucer, Jimmy? Isn't Chaucer the narrator? No, he's not. He's the writer. Don't think about Chaucer. He's the genius who gave us this classic piece of literature. So the pilgrims are also narrators inside the story who narrate about other characters. It's complex. You remember the knight told us he tells us a noble romance story about order and idealized love. Remember he told us about the two knights that loved a woman, never told her till the end? Beautiful story. And then you got the miller telling us a bawdy story. And then the reeve telling us a story about a miller and all sorts of other things. And then you got the partner who admits that he's a corrupt fraud and he delivers this tale of greed, and yet he practices greed. Think about this. Think about it. It's important to think. The anonymous narrator might be unreliable. When you have a narrator inside the story, he may be an unreliable narrator, or he could be naive. We don't know. Whatever we do, we have to go inside the story to prove our point. You understand, ladies and gentlemen? So the anonymous narrator often presents himself as modest, unsure, in the general prologue. You remember when we read that? At the end, the anonymous narrator comes in and says, hey, I'm just here. I'm just talking. I don't really know. I'm just relaying to you what I heard. That's what he says. So his illusions show throughout these tales, but in Jimmy's analysis, we try to focus on the story itself. So focus on the story. The anonymous first-person narrator tells us is inside the story. It's not the third-person narrator. What does that mean? He's outside the story. There are stories in Jimmy's website, when you're reading with Jimmy, where the narrator is not inside the story, right? He's outside the story. And again, if you see a story inside a story and you look and you read the story I alluded to with Maupassant called A Hand, it's a third-person narrator, but it's really a first-person narrator inside there, but it's told from the third person. It sounds confusing, doesn't it? Don't be confused. Just understand narration, and you will never, ever, ever go wrong when you're reading and analyzing a story, because you want to stay within the bounds of the story to prove your point. You can't listen to Jimmy. You can't listen to anybody. You have to listen to your own evidence. That's why I encourage you to read with me and formulate your own opinions. If you disagree with me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. That's my email. Just send me an email. I get a lot of emails. I try to answer them all. I can't answer them all. When I get a good one that's really far out, I'll talk about it with everybody without identifying who wrote it. So, for example, we hear a tale like The Partners. We hear it from the partner. We hear it about the partner through the prologue, who the narrator, I'm not going to read all this, but go back and pause this and read it for yourself. This is the first-person anonymous narrator inside the story, one of the pilgrims, describing the partner who was here, and he describes him right here in this beautiful paragraph, right? His eyes, he glittered like a hair. I'm not going to read it all, but go back and reread it so we get a good picture of who this character is. And then we hear the anonymous narrator sometimes stand back, and he doesn't condemn the guy. He lets the host react when he asks for relief. See? You see what I'm saying? This creates you interpretation room. The writer and the first-person narrator is not trying to tell you greed is bad. He's trying to let you decide for yourself. He's revealing the partner for what he is, and he's probably saying indirectly, well, if you believe this BS, go be my guest, pay for the relics, right? The layered narration means we're never a passive audience. We're never just here to listen. We're here to interpret, evaluate, and judge, just like in real life, just like you judge people in real life. That's what classic literature is all about. That's what it's about. We read how others lead their lives and how we should lead our own, and language is charged with meaning. Ezra Pound said that. Let's go on to the plot. You've heard me, if you're analyzing with me, this is a standard paragraph we use. We like Aristotle because Aristotle studied this stuff, and he has great classifications, right? 6 main elements to a story: plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, and song. Plot and character are the most important. Plot is the most important. This tale has a plot, clearly. Is it simple or complex? Well, we believe it's a complex plot because not only the layered, narration, but that the actions of the three friends who attempt to kill Death drive the plot forward. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even though it's a long prologue, stretched out prologue, this story about these three drunkards has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, The Partner's Tale meets this criteria. It's a complex plot. I'm not going to read all this to you, but I would like you to read it for yourself. So put me on pause and read this. All right? Here's the difficulty in The Partner's Tale. Who is the hero? Who is the hero? I don't know. Is it the three friends? No. Is it Death? No. Is it the partner? I don't know. Is there a hero? What's a hero? Hero is someone who stands up for it, right? What is a hero? What is the hero? This is a complex, beautifully complex story. It's confusing. Since the partner admits up front he's a crook, he's already has his, right, phony? Did I spell that right? Phony. He has his recognition. So why is he telling us this tale? Why is he why? Why? He's not, in fact, showing us what greed can do. Isn't that what he's doing? And there's a big difference between showing and telling. So showing is always better and stronger than telling. And classical literature almost always shows us stuff. Hamlet shows us what indecision means. All these stories we read on my website show us. That's what makes classical literature classical, is that it's a showing. Moby Dick is a classic literature. It shows us what obsession does. Ahab is obsessed with the whale. It doesn't say you shouldn't be obsessed. Don't be obsessed. It shows us what obsession can lead to. And we're looking at moral virtues. So the tale's not a purge of pity and fear like Aristotle says, but it leaves us morally unsettled. I'm confused. Jimmy today is confused. Somewhat confused. Not really. I encourage you to read The Minister's Black Veil on my website. This is a great story by Nathaniel Hawthorne about a guy who puts on a veil suddenly for his sermon, and he doesn't take it off even after he's dead. It's a great story of what a gesture does, what sin really is. Check it out. So, Characters have to be believable. Aristotle believed the best tragedies have a balance between good and evil characters. Is that true here? Are there good characters? Are there good characters in this tale? I don't know. See, that's why Aristotle's good to bounce things off of, but if it doesn't fit Aristotle, there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason. Is there anybody good in this tale? The partner himself is not good. Well, it depends how you define good. Let's talk about that for a minute. Can we talk about that for a minute? Virtue as a spectrum, the golden mean. Here's another Aristotelian thought. The golden mean. What does that mean? Well, Aristotle means virtue lies in between extremes. You have extremes, right? The golden mean says staying in the middle, keeping a balance. In other words, if you're going to drink, don't drink to excess. But if you're going to drink, don't drink nothing. There's certain people who say, well, I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink at all. Well, that's okay too, right? But virtue, whatever that means to you, is in the middle of extremes. For example, courage is between cowardice and recklessness. And if you think about that, that's true. If you say this guy's got courage, it could look like recklessness. But if he's doing something that looks like courage, he's probably not a coward, right? Generosity is between stinginess and extravagance and so on. So this tale, the three drunkards have no balance. They just move from one thing to another, right? They're going to kill Death, then they get, gold, I get greed, right? So they're greedy, they're violent, and they have pride. They show boldness in their quest. Let's go kill death. Damn it, I'm tired of him killing us. Then they show unity of purpose, but only briefly, because once they see the goal, that flies out, right? They're not going to really do that. And they show initiative and action. But really, it's misdirected towards what they call sin. So Aristotle believed that characters cannot act without reference to the situation in which they're placed. He believed passive character would produce no action, so characters have to be dynamic, which they are. Thought refers to underlying thought of the message. I'm not going to read everything here. Pause me and read it for yourself. In The Partner's Tale, there are several themes that we've pointed out, the main one being greed. But the three rioters, the drunkards, are personification of greed, but only in one dimension. They're living, speaking, acting of greed. Chaucer doesn't label them as greed. He lets their choices show greed. Remember showing and telling, not naming greed? This is a story about us, unless you're not greedy. What is greed? Is greed good? Do you remember Wall Street? Greed is good. Remember when Michael Douglas Jr. said that? Greed is good. So what if the partner doesn't think that greed is evil? Stop and think about this for a minute. And he clearly doesn't. He clearly does not think greed is evil. He says it's evil, right? He says it's the root of all evil, but he doesn't believe that because he himself is greedy. Do you understand? The partner doesn't show signs of shame, only strategy. His attitude isn't, I know this is wrong and I'm weak, but it's more like, well, everyone wants something, and I found a way to get my something. You see what I'm saying? He brags about how he tricks people. He knows sermons by heart. He throws in Latin. He quotes scripture. He sells fake relics. He admits all this. And there's no regret. Instead, he weaponizes morality. Do you see what I'm saying? In his universe, in his moral universe, greed is good. I don't know. He may not, I don't know. It doesn't sound like he sees it as a sin. This makes him less of a hypocrite and a nihilist, the person who believes that life is meaningless and rejects all religion and moral principles. He flips it. You understand? This, again, led me to this thought. Man gets used to everything. Greed is natural. This is Dostoevsky's insight. We've got several Dostoevsky's books on this website. Please read them. That human beings can get used to anything. You can get used to anything. Even moral bankruptcy. If you start doing the same thing over and over and over again, it's an addiction, right? And it becomes normal, right? I hope you read Notes from Underground, especially. The partner may be in a moral universe other than our own. In his universe, for example, Sparta, which was a great city-state of Greece, right? They believed that war is good. War is good. That's what they live for, is fighting. And so when they trained their young people, if you got caught stealing something, you didn't get punished because you were stealing. You got punished because you got caught stealing. There's a difference. Do you understand that? They didn't say stealing is bad, which it is in my moral universe. I hope it is in yours. They got punished because they got caught stealing. The fact that they got caught doing it. That sounds a little too familiar these days, doesn't it? I don't know. Classical literature is about morality, moral choices, moral choices. So greed is how the world works. Well, why not be greedy? If everybody believes that, I should have a right to do that too. You see what I'm saying? That's dangerous thinking. Very dangerous. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay, if it's all right for me to shoot them, I'll shoot me, right? No. You got to think about these things. So this story isn't a warning. It's a marketing pitch. He's basically telling people how he makes money. And then he doesn't fear greed. He trusts it, right? It's greed is what I do. And he tries his greed, and then he gets hammered by the host. Thank goodness for the host. Isn't it? Thank goodness that the host saw through this guy, right? He's a corporate spin doctor, the Wall Street broker, the self-help guru. How many times do you get pitched online by, oh, just, come with me, I'll make zillions of dollars, right? Jesus. People fall for that stuff. Bernie Madoff comes to mind. For him, greed it's not deadly, it's a part of his routine. So one of the questions I asked myself was, is Chaucer really that smart? And the minute I'm analyzing this with you, the more I realized he was. He basically showed us corruption without saying it was corrupt. He just showed us a guy who believes he's greedy, he lies, he's a fraud. And then he showed it to us, and he shows us what happens when he preaches. Now, if it weren't for the host, maybe somebody would have said, yeah, here's some money, forgive my sins, or whatever they were doing in those days. But I want you to think about this too. It's a psychological realism. Dostoevsky said writers write about people you wouldn't meet in 100 years, but that doesn't make them any less real. That's in my own words. I can give you the quote. It's from a book he wrote called The Idiot. Classical literature's greatest asset is it helps us see ourselves, our real self, or the selves of other people. Nobody's going to come up like this guy did and tell you, hey, Jimmy, I'm a fraud. Here's what I do. Now, how about doing this? Would you give me some money? Nobody's going to tell you that. Nobody's going to tell you that, right? About their true self unless they're confessing to you. And who would confess to you? And who do you confess to? So I'm just suggesting that when you read the Pardoner's Tale, it's an unbelievable picture of what really was happening in his day in religion, in any organized institution, in a corporation. You've heard sometimes about cults, right? What does that mean? They believe certain things together, right? And stories. You can Google stories about, corporations that went south. In any case, he creates a character who confesses his own corruption, and he keeps talking about it. And you've met people like this. Say one thing, they do another thing, and you just think about the people around you. You believe somebody, and then they do something, and you say, how the hell can I believe that of them? How the hell did I believe that? Haven't you had that experience? If not, lucky you. He shows intelligence and moral blindness can coexist. The partners, nothing wrong with what I'm doing. There are a lot of smart people in the world, but at the same time, those smart people can be immoral, whatever that means. And again, you got to define these words for yourself. Bernie Madoff, Google him, comes to my mind. Yeah, he's a smart guy, but boy, he scammed people. He presents a tale that's perfectly moral, told by someone who profits from the moral. Morality is an interesting concept. And I discuss morality almost in every classic story we read. And I'm not trying to tell you what is moral, what is good, what is bad. You have to figure that out for yourself. Hopefully you define it properly, right? Whatever that means. But there has to be a morality. If you don't have a morality, what do you have? Chaos. I don't want to live in chaos. Do you? Do you want to live in chaos? Do you want to live a lie? You should think about this deeply and often rather than float through life. Unless, you know what? There's a saying, ignorance is bliss. There's a reason that it's bliss, right? Because you just don't think about it. He does this with zero authority. In other words, he's not telling you what to do. The partner is himself. It's a level of drama and complexity that's today I can't imagine anyone writing a story like this. It's unbelievably, that's why it's a classic. because you can read the classic on many, many different levels. So here's a final thought. When the partner says sin is an opportunity and makes far more dangerous than a hypocrite, he is a very dangerous man. He's redefining vice. And Chaucer must have seen that. And he knew people could use religion and language as tools. And so the host's final outburst comes in an unfiltered moral clarity. So he preaches against greed. He admits he's greedy. He tries to sell fake. And then that host tells you what we read, right? I'm going to take your balls, right? So there's no polite, it's outrageous moral. He's just reacting. So the host says, in essence, you're not just a fraud, you're a disgrace. I'm going to humiliate you. It's a gut punch. Bam, right in the gut. Without hitting the guy, right? In violence. And then the knight, of course, steps in and says, come on, let's kiss and make up. Email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy. And you've been analyzing The Pardoner's Tale with Jimmy. Come on. I hope you read it with me. If not, please go back and reread it. You can reread it more than once. And hopefully after this analysis, you do go back and reread it. You'll get a lot more out of it. And thank you so much for being with me. I really enjoy your participation. I enjoy your emails. Good, bad, and indifferent. When you send me emails, I enjoy it. I'm glad you're getting something out of this. Because I know I've got followers now on YouTube. I'm very happy as the audience grows. Don't stop being with me. Classics will teach you how to lead your life, really, and their language charged with meaning. Thank you so much for being here, and have a great day. Be careful what people are telling you.